Reading from the prophet Isaiah. I, the Lord, your God, I'm holding you by the right hand, and I tell you, do not be afraid. I will help you. Do not be afraid, Jacob, poor worm, Israel, puny mite. I will help you. It is the Lord who speaks. The Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. See, I turn you into a threshing sled, new with doubled teeth. You shall thresh and crush the mountains and turn the hills to chaff. You shall winnow them, and the wind will blow them away. The gale will scatter them. But you yourself will rejoice in the Lord and glory in the Holy One of Israel. The poor and the needy ask for water, and there is none. Their tongue is parched with thirst. I, the Lord, will answer them. I, the God of Israel, will not abandon them. I will make rivers well up on barren heights and fountains in the midst of valleys. Turn the wilderness into a lake and dry ground into water spring. In the wilderness I will put cedar trees, acacias, myrtles, olives. In the desert I will plant juniper, plane tree, and cypress side by side, so that men may see and know, may all observe and understand that the hand of the Lord has done this, that the Holy One of Israel has created it. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
The Lord is kind and full of compassion, slow to anger, abounding in love.
The Lord
is kind and full of
compassion,
slow to anger, abounding in love. I will give you glory, O God, my King. I will bless your name forever. How good is the Lord to all, compassionate to all his creatures. The Lord is kind and full of compassion, slow to anger, abounding in love. All your creatures shall thank you, O Lord, and your friends shall repeat their blessing. They shall speak of the glory of your reign and declare your might, O God, to make known to men your mighty deeds and the glorious splendor of your reign. The Lord is kind and full of compassion, slow to anger, abounding in love. Yours is an everlasting kingdom. Your rule lasts from age to age.
The Lord
is kind and full of compassion, slow to anger, abounding in love. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Come to us, Lord, with your peace, that we may rejoice in your presence with sincerity of heart.
Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus spoke to the crowds. I tell you solemnly, of all the children born of women, a greater than John the Baptist has never been seen. Yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he is. Since John the Baptist came up to this present time, the kingdom of heaven has been subjected to violence, and the violent are taking it by storm. Because it was towards John that all the prophecies of the prophets and of the law were leading. And he, if you will believe me, is the Elijah who was to return. If anyone has ears to hear, let him listen. The Gospel of the Lord. Many years ago, I was once invited as a guest speaker to a gathering of ecumenical Christians. It was in another deanery. And they asked if I would come and talk about the Bible. Yes, I said, but on what particular aspect? They said, we've already had one talk on the Old Testament, and then we had a second talk on the New Testament. So I said, well, although that left me still quite a wide field, it didn't give me much of a lead. It wasn't very helpful. So I decided to base my talk on the links between the Old and the New, and very much the middle bit, the hinge, the gap between the pages between the Old and the New Testament, a bridge, if you like. And John the Baptist is that bridge between the Old and the New Testament, a prophet that slipped from the Old Testament into the New, if you like. Today's Gospel recounts one of those rare occasions when Jesus himself speaks about John the Baptist. His words about him were prompted by the fact that John had sent a message where he was in prison to seek a final reassurance that his ministry had not been in vain. You remember he said, "Are you the one that was sent?" He had prepared the way for the coming of Jesus, and now he faced death. Perhaps there was a moment of doubt, but Jesus reassures him. The Lord then begins to speak to the people glowingly of John. And yet, as if in contradiction, he goes on to say, "He who is the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." Jesus is highlighting the transition from the old covenant to the new covenant. Up to the time of John was a time of prophecy, of preparation, of the fulfillment of God's plan of salvation. Right from the beginning of the prophets, they were prophesying the Messiah. With the incarnation of Jesus, the time of fulfillment had arrived. The kingdom of heaven is among us. John, as it were, straddles the threshold of the kingdom of heaven. As such, he was the greatest of all who had gone before and were part of God's preparation. Nevertheless, he cannot be compared with those who have the privilege of being part of the fulfilled plan, as we are. There is a sense in which John carries in himself all of God's preparatory and prophetic activity. Perhaps this is what Jesus means when he says that John is Elijah, who is to come. Now Jesus introduces another note into the scene. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence, and men of violence take it by force. What could that mean? Is this a sort of prophetic allusion to Jesus' own coming and suffering? But what is meant from the days of John the Baptist until now? If he's speaking of John's public ministry, this is a very short period of time. What violence has taken place other than John's arrest? Perhaps we should think of the birth of the Baptist. It is in Matthew's Gospel that it is recorded for us the massacre of the holy innocents following Jesus' birth. Were these the least in the kingdom of heaven? Something to ponder.